Thank you. Love to have you here. Are you doing still good? Yeah? Excited for the next talk up here. Now, I would like to welcome two lovely people from Zeitgeist from Hamburg. And they told me nobody else would be able to tell as much about this project than they do. So please welcome on stage Martin and Natalie.
Thank you.
So this is your stage. We are happy to have you. Have fun.
Thank you. And thank you for this warm introduction. I'm Natalie. It is my very first NeosCon. It is my very first talk on a stage. So you might assume I'm quite nervous. Thank you. But I'm also super happy to be standing here today together with Martin to talk about the brand hub we implemented for our client, DSR. So just a brief overview. I will start with a short introduction, give some details about the project itself and what we actually implemented, which was a headless design system. And Martin will then give you some more technical details. And that's where we dive right into. The client itself, who is it? Who is DSR? DSR is a multiple brand hotel operator. You might have heard some of the brands already, which is Aya. They focus on family and group tourism. Arosa and Louis Jacob, they have more like a luxurious accommodation style. Henry Hotels are boutique hotels in cities and in rural areas. And Urban Nature with more of a lifestyle focus for their rooms. So you might get already an idea that they have quite different positionings and quite different target groups. What they all have in common is that they offer more than just accommodation. So they also offer wellness areas, they offer gastronomy, like restaurants at their hotels, and events and congresses. So everything of that is happening on their website, and I'd like to make some teeny tiny time travel back in 2024, where DSR had 5 brands with 5 websites running on 5 systems. As I already mentioned, they have quite distinct target groups, hence distinct corporate identities. And when launching new features, new content elements, we already had quite different design approaches as we were discussing all these features with the marketing team, but also with the design department. And therefore, we had quite some individual technical implementation. We tried to find some common ground, but in the end, there was very little shared code. So we had a lot of duplicated or slightly different components, which led to a really high effort in design and development, so a lot of costs. And as time and costs were running into the duplicated components, we were also limited in the scalability of the website itself. So this made DSR and us question, how can we unify the system without losing the identity of all the brands? And the question, at least for us, was quite clear from the beginning. It must be like a headless design system. This wasn't only a technical challenge, it was also an organizational one for DSR. So we had many, many meetings with DSR and with different stakeholders, from management to the marketing department who organizes the website on the DSR side, to the design department to the editors. In general, there are 80 editors or more than 80 ones who actually work with the sites. So it was a lot of talking about bringing all the priorities together. What does every brand need? Where do we need standardization? Where does it make sense to have like a distinct design, for example? And key was to talk about that the meta design system will only help and not limit any brand identity. So in the end, there was a lot of talking to create trust in a headless design system. And this headline design system we then called the DSR.BrandHub, which is like having 4 ground pillars. One of them is consistency. So we have a consistent user experience and consistent accessibility on all the brand sites. We have individuality, so it is possible to have an individual corporate identity of the brand on the website. We work even more efficiently when it comes to costs and code. And we have a scalability, as it is quite easy now to add a new brand or new websites. So I'd like to have a look on the project itself and why it is really important to have like a holistic look on a website for a hotel operator. Why is it so important? A website for a hotel operator is so important because the revenue that is generated on a website itself is highly valuable because, for example, when you sell a lot of hotel rooms on third-party platforms like Booking.com, for example, you have to pay quite high commission fees. So one of the business goals of a website is generating revenue. Another one is promoting offers. So we might have early bird offers or last-minute offers to really reach a high occupancy level throughout the year in a hotel. And not to forget, a website is very often the very first touch point between a customer and the hotel itself. So with like most of the question answered a guest might have, you will reduce the support load in a call center, which also is a high cost driver for hotels. So when we look at the revenue that needs to be generated, we also need to have a look on how do hotels actually sell their rooms. And there are mainly 4 reasons. One is the location. You cannot really do anything about the location in a marketing department. What you can do something about is images. This is also very important in the BrandHub, and Martin will talk about that in a few minutes a bit more, which leaves price. And when we're talking about prices, it's getting quite complex because prices are dynamic. When we look on prices in tourism, it is quite different to pricings in e-commerce, for example, because we don't only have inventory and demand that drive prices, we also have availability. So prices are constantly changing. You might find the same room on an early stage for like a cheap price, and later on the same room might be more expensive. You have these different offers I already mentioned for last minute and early bird, but also other offers for vacation, like holidays like Christmas or Easter, for example, to really drive the target of the high occupancy. It is super demand driven. I mean, we're standing here in Karlsruhe Hotel today in a hotel, so probably the prices for this hotel also were changing for a conference, but think bigger, like big events, big conferences that do really make an impact. And there are also external factors like weather, for example, that also have an influence on the prices. So there are many, many ways to calculate a room rate, but there are also many ways to display a room rate on the website. And together with DSR, we really wanted to make sure that we have no fake prices on the website. So it was important that we generate a transparent booking experience with no misleading teaser prices whatsoever. And to reach that, we integrated an hourly price validation. So all prices on all offers are updated once an hour with the goal to have accurate prices, but also to generate trust. And when we're talking about hourly updated prices, we also need to talk about performance, because you have constantly changing data on the website. You have dozens of prices per page. In this example, we have a landing page for Arosa. I think in total there are more than 20 offers on the site. Imagine these offers being updated hourly. Imagine that there's not only one landing page on a website, but several, with several offers, and multiply that for 5 brands. I think you can get an idea of the performance we're dealing with here. So all these reasons were like additionally giving a reason to build this brand hub, to have an efficient development, to have a shared logic across all the brands, to really be able to reuse the components we built once, and to have a continuous optimization, to have cost and money and time for that. So I already mentioned the headless design system. How did we do it? We use Figma for this project, and in Figma we have we implemented a shared component architecture, so we can ensure there is a consistent user experience across all the brands with the same accessibility standards, with the same responsive behavior, and with still brand-specific styling. So on the left, you can see an example for buttons. We have it here for Arosa, Aya, Urban Nature, and for Henry. What is kind of special for this project is that the design department decided they wanted to have 3 dark backgrounds and 3 bright backgrounds, which was an accessibility challenge. But here you can see it's always the same component, but still it looks somehow differently. How does it actually work? We use tokens and token collections. You might know tokens already as well, but you also might know styles, which was the version of tokens before. It is quite similar. We defined 1 token set per brand, and in the end, these tokens control how the components look, not how they work. This is done in the front and back end, but with the key idea to have the same component, but just in a different look. And what really makes it special for us is the automation we implemented behind it. So we have an automated pipeline that enables us to export the design variables from Figma to the front end. So with just a few clicks, we have these more than 1,000 design tokens we have per brand implemented into the front end. So luckily, we don't have these manual translations, many of you might know, and also have no inconsistencies between Figma and the front end. So I think we can tick off the standardization, but what about the individualization, which was so important for DSR? So with these tokens, we can have differences in, I listed here some, colors, typography, spacing, image gaps, and so on. I think colors and typography is nothing really new. What is quite nice to use these tokens for are all these spacings and margin tokens. Because, for example, I will use the, I hope I have it here. This black line for the Arosa design is one of the design characteristics we implemented. So the tokens for this line are available for all brands, but they only have characteristics and pixels and colors for Arosa, for example, and not for Henry and for Aya, the 2 examples you can see below. And for Henry and Arosa, Henry and Aya. These are the 2 brands you can see here. And Aya uses, for example, highlights in the headline. So these tokens are also available for all brands, but just used in Aya and Henry, for example. Additionally, DSR implemented some content guidelines they use for the editors, and we have, in some cases, automatic addressings because some brands use the formal addressing and others use the informal one on their website. So how does it look in the end? It's not just a white page. It is the examples for Aya, Arosa, Henry, Louis Jacob, and Urban Nature here. So in general, it is all the same code, but it just looks differently. And of course, it works for mobile as well. And with these many images, my part is over, and I will hand over to you, Martin.
Thank you. So DSR is an old customer, and it is quite a big project. Just Friday I checked. We have 38 packages in the customer namespace, together with 31 packages in the Zeitgeist namespace in this project. At the moment, it changes all the time. So we had to choose what details we tell you about, and we tried to pick two that we think are applicable to general Neos projects or general web projects. So first thing, Natalie also already mentioned, pricing is an issue, and not killing performance by rendering dozens of prices all over the place. And to really get why this is a problem, I want to show you where those prices come from. If you look to the right, you see a thing that's called a property management system. Each hotel has one, so there are 35 different property management systems, not all from the same vendor. And those systems know about every room. They know which room was left from the previous guest in a poor state, which room will be renovated next summer. And they know which guests will be in this room the next week, and they will know which guests will show up to breakfast tomorrow morning. The PMS does not care about prices, at least not regarding to selling. They will probably know what the customers paid that are in the hotel, but PMS is more about fulfillment. So it's not about selling the actual hotel. The actual prices are defined by the central reservation system, and this one talks to all the different PMS and will take the availabilities from the PMS and assign the rates. So it will also decide at which point which availabilities are put to the market. So some are sold early as early bird prices, some are late, and as last minute prices, and in between the system tries to optimize the amount of money it makes for the customer. The central reservation system also talks to third-party channels like the call center or even other platforms like Booking that take a share of the revenue, which is not that attractive to our customer. But the CRS is also what we talk to from the website. And we talk to it in a protocol called SOAP, which is a bit oldish, but that's not the bad part. The bad part is when you look into all those SOAP endpoints and you see what parameters they expect, that each parameter or each endpoint has a single parameter, which is a string and called XML. So it's an even older XML API wrapped into SOAP, documented in a PDF from 2010, last major revision 2013, with some annotations in 2021. Together with some XML examples, lots of emails, you get the point. It's a mess. But we still hear that it's one of the better APIs in tourism. So, okay. But how we deal with that? First rule, create an anti-corruption layer. So we created a package that has the sole purpose of talking to the CRS, dealing with the XML mess, and providing a sane PHP API internally, which is then used by other packages to run the booking engine and to render prices on the website and do many things. So how do those prices look? Natalie already showed. And when you see a number on one of the website, usually what is behind is that an editor chose to display a price, or he added an offer teaser, selected a hotel, chose from which time period the price shall be searched. He selects how many nights shall be searched, how many persons are in the room, and he can also specify whether a specific rate or a specific room shall be searched. And the cheapest offer from that whole period will then end up on the website. So this can be done with a single request, but for every number on the website, we do a SOAP request to the CRS to display a single digit with a euro, or a single number with a euro. You can imagine that does not work well if we do it on the fly. Still, we want to be up to date. So the first thing we did, we knew it would probably not work forever, but we started with classic caching, how one does in Flow. And first thing we have is a response cache. In our case, it is Flowpack full page cache. It could also be a varnish. Below that, there is a classic fusion cache where we have content elements and assign a cache period. We mentioned we wanted to be accurate to the hour, so that would be an hour, and cache tags to ensure content is flushed if editors do things. We had a third layer, which is a cache for the request to the reservation system, and this has the main purpose of deduplicating requests where the same price is fetched multiple times, because things like the cheapest price for 2 adults at 1 night is displayed in many places. So it does not make sense to fetch it every 5 minutes if we just requested it shortly ago. So that's the third layer, and we started with that, and that was some years ago when those websites were still separate systems. It worked in the beginning for a while, but back then we had much fewer hotels, and editors did not get used to the price display system already as much as they are today. So eventually we learned that by layering classic caches, you eventually run in a situation where all those layers are empty at once, and one unlucky customer has to wait until all those backend requests are processed. And you know how well PHP handles concurrency. So we had to improve on that. And first thing we tried to optimize that is, well, how about we try to be lazy? So before being smart, we try to be lazy. And we've seen things in other APIs that we liked and we would like to use to optimize the questions to the reservation system. First thing we've seen was the grace period that is known from Varnish, where the cache will still return an old result for a while and try to do the update in the backend while the user had the pretty much still good response very fast. So we liked that. And we had also seen a thing in Symfony caches where a cache does not have the API where you have a separate set and get function, but a single resolve function that takes a cache identifier and a closure that can generate the cache result, and the cache internally will decide whether the closure needs to be evaluated or not. And the third building block we liked was the shutdown function from the Flow lifecycle, or it's also in PHP. And we wanted to combine that to get the same behavior from Varnish, where during a grace period, stale results are returned and updates are performed in the backend. The result is a package called Sidecar Stalemate. And it takes a classic cache from classic Flow cache and offers an interface as a closure cache. It is still in use for secondary APIs today. So for fetching weather or ratings, we still use it. But eventually we learned that a shutdown function is a bit too much for 20 requests or 20 SOAP requests to external systems. And a shutdown function also are quite a bit hard to debug, because when the shutdown function is evaluated, the customer already has his response, so no one will see the errors. And if you try to do too much in such a function, it will eventually fail and come down to a synchronous evaluation in the end. And we are in the beginning, where one customer has to wait for all the backend requests to be processed. So that does not work, but it's still valuable in places, and it's an easy escalation from classic caches. But now we thought, how can we improve on that? And what we ended with is, yeah, maybe it's wrong if we think about this as caching. And what we tried in the next iteration is not be lazy, be industrious. And we implemented dedicated workers. To do that, we modeled the specification for which price shall be fetched as a PHP object. And other than representing a price specification, those models can only do one thing. They can generate a hash, which is also used as a cache tag for the rendered result. The price specification is then handed to a price service, which will get the information, and it will also put this specification on a schedule, so it will be updated once an hour afterwards from a worker, which will run once an hour, and it will flush the tags whenever it detects that the price was actually changed. So it will not do anything if the price is the same as before. And the last component is a cleanup process, where we will ensure that prices that were not used for rendering for a while will eventually be removed from the schedule. So in the end, we have a fully cached front end. We have no cache timeouts at all. And we have no price fetching during rendering. But still, prices and availabilities are accurate to the hour, and we are sure about that. So I think that's an achievement. And that works until now. Maybe I can tell you more next year. Next thing I want to talk to you about is images. Natalie mentioned those are important for hotels as well. And one could say, yeah, well, Neos can do everything with images. We have also third-party packages for responsive images. What's to do here? Well, some things can be improved and need improvement. And first thing we did not like is that the alt and title attributes for images, which are important for accessibility, are stored in separate properties today. And one could say it's an inconvenience, but it also has serious drawbacks, because it is really hard to validate that if an image is selected, also alt and title are chosen, if the image is optional. So you could create a node type that has a required image, then you could also make the title and alt required. But if the image is optional, good luck. And also, it is quite weird if you have multiple images in a node type, then you also have multiple alt and title attributes, and it's quite easy to mess those up and assign the wrong one to the wrong image, or miss one at all in the integration. So still nothing one cannot deal with, but it's a thing that is easily messed up, and it's also hard to detect because it's invisible unless you check your accessibility. So easy to mess up, not ideal. We should do that better than that. But also, it's not the bad part. Bad part is image collections and what's wrong with them. Problem is, actually, we don't have collections. We only have asset collections. So that are not image collections. We can only select assets. We cannot crop them. We cannot assign metadata to assets. And basically, that's it. And also, it requires a lot of inspector space, at least in the way it is implemented now. So if we would like to have multiple asset collections in a node type, pretty much editors would have to do much scrolling in the inspector, so not much fun. How to improve that? Of course, we have an image, and we want to store it together with the alt and title data. And to go with the picture, put the cat in a box with a name tag, and transfer to PHP, it's called a value object. And for this image value objects, we created a specific editor, which looks the same as before, exactly. So, but this is stored in a single property with all three values, the image identifier, the alt and title tag, in one object. That allows us to create a validator to ensure that if an image is chosen, also alt and title are assigned. For collections, we did the same, so we can create collections. We have a specific editor for that. It allows cropping of single images. It allows us to enforce an aspect ratio for a collection. It allows to assign metadata for each images, and it allows us to require that metadata is assigned to each image. And also, it is much more compact, allowing us to store multiple image collections for a single node. Whew. All the thing, as we usually do, is published. It's called a package Zeitgeist Kaleidoscope Value Object, and as the namespace suggests, that may be a downside, it's built on Zeitgeist Kaleidoscope. So if you use Zeitgeist Kaleidoscope, you can just check it out. If you don't, you can use it as a template or implement a similar solution for whatever you use to render your images. It's open source, it supports NEOS 8 and 9, and yeah, it just works for us. What have we achieved? We have images, and we know they have the required metadata. We have image collections we use extensively. So for each hotel, we have image collections for the different season. So whenever we render a teaser for an offer that is in winter, we will put a hotel image from the winter beside it and not a sunny beach. We use it also for image collections for the different rooms, and we can use those collections to render teasers and pick images just from those pre-prepared collections, and editors don't have to select images for single price teasers. And also, the integration is much easier. We are passing around a single value. We take it from the node properties, pass it to the integration, so no need to deal with multiple properties, and we can have as many images in a node as we like and still be sure that the metadata is assigned. How many time do we have left? How much time? Oh.
Not that much, I think.
Okay. We have more details.
Oh, nice.
But I will be shorter with them. First, we have a full booking engine in the website. So it is a JavaScript application powered by JSON endpoints that allows to select the hotel, specify the travel period, which persons are traveling, select the room and the rate, and finally put in your customer data and check out to finalize the booking. So it's quite a big part, and we could talk for hours about that. There is Chatbot, another JavaScript application powered by JSON endpoints that has access to all the prices, weather, and hotel informations from the website. So it pretty much has reading access to all the information the EBA has or the website has. It also knows about the content of the website, which we indexed into a vector store, and the whole chatbot is built on the OpenAI response and conversation APIs. And behind those JSON endpoints, or those two and many more JSON endpoints, is a solution we implemented to solve a problem we had with JSON REST endpoints in the past. Because when front-end and back-end communicate, it's all fine in the beginning, where you specify what data is to be sent back and forth. But if those interfaces evolve over time, you eventually end up in a situation where a value will be null that is not expected to be null by the other party. And It's especially bad in internal interfaces because while no one has time to actually document them and update the documentation, it is also true that the customer expects us to communicate between our teams or inside our teams and not mess up our own data. So we wanted to improve on that and make our life easier. And to do that, we generate open API specifications directly from our PHP code by using Reflection API. And so that way we have a specification that is 100% up to date, 100% complete and accurate. So it's not one of those OpenAI specs that are not worth the paper. So they are true. You can use them to generate clients from the TypeScript, which will talk to the to PHP, and eventually it allows us to have type-safe communication from backend to frontend, and a fully type-safe frontend that knows which data it can expect from the backend. The solution is published as well. It's called Zeitgeist Scheme on You. We presented it last year on the studio stage, but ever since we used it for pretty much any API we created. So it's one of the things you will find in every Zeitgeist project nowadays. So that's all from me.
And also from me. It's just a thank you slide. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And I got presents for you. First things first. It was actually Marika and the team was eager to find the perfect, like,
Nice.
This is now the Zeitgeist section. It wasn't too hard to find that, obviously. This one's for you.
Nice, thank you.
This one's for you. And
Thank you.
thank you for that great talk. And thank you. And I want you to give a very special applause to Natalie for her first ever great talk.
Thank you. Thank you.
You did very well.
Thank you.
So we do have some questions. One question got answered during the talk, so we don't
Perfect.
have that one anymore. Was regarding prices. One question is, I like the Figma part a lot. How active is this integration in actual production? How often is it being used?
I think once a week,
Okay.
so
Probably.
quite regular.
Yeah.
So whenever we add features, and it's the website is in pretty much active development. We are always adjusting the EBA, so we always need new tokens, and so I think once a week we have to import the whole token sets.
We actually added 2 new brands in the last 2 months, I think, or 3. So it is quite a regular process, and therefore there are regular updates and even like for new features, example. So it is quite often that we do that. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I love it. And then we have a question. I guess it's Mark Henry, MH. I guess the soup does not provide a webhook when a price was changed, question mark. Otherwise, one could use that signal to flush a custom Fusion tag.
We would love to have an event stream, but we don't. I think that was not invented back then when SOAP was a thing,
Okay.
and XML before. So maybe in future, but we tried to ask nicely whether they have
Several
a
times.
more modern API, and they ever ignored the question.
Okay.
So we have no hopes there.
Well, great. Thank you. That was it. Thank you very, very much for that great talk. Have another round of applause. And you, please don't forget to rate the talk. Thank you.